Today we're going to learn about microevolution, which is evolutionary changes within a species or small group of organisms, especially over a short time period. So we say that there are 5 agents of microevolution, or 5 ways in which microevolution occurs. And so these 5 agents are genetic drift, mutation, gene flow, non-random mating, and natural selection. So today we'll go over all 5 of these agents and talk about how they cause microevolution. So the first agent of microevolution we're going to talk about is genetic drift. So genetic drift is a random change in the population due to some type of catastrophic event. So a good example of genetic drift that we'll use is the cheetah population. So humans have hunted cheetahs nearly to extinction. However, the cheetahs that humans have hunted are random. So when they hunt, we're not purposely selecting for certain genes to pretty much go extinct versus certain genes to survive. So we have randomly hunted cheetahs, and we've taken down the population where they were almost extinct. And so when that happens, we get something called a bottleneck effect. Okay. So when the population is destroyed, you have these characteristics of species that are determined by only the surviving organisms. So if we look at this picture over here of the bottleneck effect, so here's our original population. So you can see we have green individuals, purple individuals, and yellow individuals. Well, so then let's say there's some sort of bottleneck event or some sort of catastrophic event where only a few survive. And so now if we look at the surviving population, most of the individuals are purple and there's just one little green. So if these ones are going to survive and reproduce, we're primarily going to see purple individuals, maybe a couple green and no yellow individuals. So if we go back to the cheetah example, we've seen this with our cheetahs. So we've hunted them to almost extinction, where just a few have survived. And so those few that have survived, they've had to mate with each other to produce their offspring. And again, since there's just a small population, there's been a lot of interbreeding. And so if we look at cheetahs, there's very little genetic variation left because all the surviving cheetahs, if they kind of look like this population. So they all have very similar genes due to inbreeding. And so cheetahs are extremely susceptible to disease and health issues because they don't have that genetic variation. Another thing we see with genetic drift is something called the founder effect. So this is an establishment of a new population when one species is randomly separated from the original. So here, let's look. We have this population of beetles. So we have red beetles and yellow beetles. And somehow this red beetle, they start to migrate just to an island. And so if the red beetle got there first and started making its own population, we're going to see all of this surviving and like next generations of beetles sharing the same genes as the original or the founder of that population. Our second agent of microevolution is mutation. So mutations are just errors in DNA sequences. So here we have like the two-headed snake that of course formed due to a mutation in the DNA. Another example, let's say that there's this green population of beetles and 2 green beetles mate, and there is some sort of mutated gene that resulted in a brown beetle. So since we have a mutation, we're changing up the gene pool, and we're going to see a little bit of evolution now if we get a new color beetle due to mutation. Third is gene flow, which is really the same thing as migration. So if you want to add in your notes, you can write migration. So gene flow is just a change in the gene pool due to the movement of genes in or out of the population. So here we have the dark brown beetles. Over here we have a population of the light brown and yellow beetles. And you can see multiple beetles are going to migrate from one population to the next. And when they migrate to new populations, they're going to mix up the gene pool. So this light beetle is going to mate with these dark ones. And again, by mating, they're going to mix up the gene pool. These dark ones can mate with the light ones. And again, we'll mix up the gene pool. Fourth is non-random mating. And so non-random mating is some individuals will be more or less likely to mate with another individual based on a specific genotype or phenotype. So what this is really called is just sexual selection. So here, we're going back to the beetle example. So this dark brown beetle, if it was gonna randomly mate with the light brown, the dark brown, or the yellowish color, well, that would be random mating. However, if the dark brown beetle chooses to mate with a dark brown beetle because it looks like itself and it prefers that color, well, then that's non-random mating, right? It's choosing a mate based off of that certain genotype. And so when we don't have random mating and we're choosing mating, then that causes evolution to occur. And fifth is natural selection. So this is when nature selects certain traits to survive and reproduce. And by doing that, we see, again, evolution happening. So earlier in this unit, we talked about the giraffe. So nature is selecting for the giraffe with the long neck. That one's going to survive and have baby giraffes also with a long neck. And we'll see the population change where giraffes end up with longer necks over time. All right, so here's just a nice little summary of 4 of the 5 examples of microevolution. Okay, and we're all going to use the beetles for them. So mutation is when there's a change in the DNA. So the 2 green beetles have some sort of mutated strand of DNA to make a brown beetle. Gene flow is just migration. So beetles moving from one population to the next and mixing up the gene pool. Genetic drift is when some random catastrophic event happens. So here, let's say we have this population of green and brown beetles, and let's just say by random chance they get stepped on. And it just happened to be that the green ones were in the right location where they got stepped on, and it only leaves behind the brown beetles. So now the gene pool that remains is only brown beetles. And then finally, we have natural selection. So when nature selects for a certain genotype to survive better. So in this case, we have this lizard-like animal and it's eating the beetles. Notice it's on a brown branch. So the brown beetles probably blend into the branch and the green ones probably stick out better. So the lizards can eat more of the green beetles, which is going to leave more brown beetles to survive.